Hey everyone, welcome back to Otakuact. I'm absolutely shaking after this episode of Solo Leveling. Season 3 episode 12 just wrapped up the Japan Crisis arc, so Jin-Woo enters this dungeon, right? And immediately, I'm getting chills because the narrative describes how this dungeon struck him with its vastness. It was unlike any he had encountered before, immense and boundless, far larger than any high-ranking dungeon he had seen. Like, when Jin-Woo is impressed by a dungeon's size, you know something big is about to go down. But then Baru, Jin-Woo's shadow, picks up on something with his heightened senses. He alerts his liege to an odd sound, faint but distinct. A strange laughter echoing from deep within, and Jin-Woo heard it too, and was taken aback. Someone was laughing in there. Even after he had entered the gate, his expression hardened, and with a silent nod, he gave the signal to move forward. As they go deeper into the dungeon, the foul laughter grew louder until Jin-Woo finally came upon a massive figure bound in thick black chains. The restraints wrapped around its neck, torso, and limbs, some of them pierced directly through its flesh. Despite being restrained, the giant seemed amused, flashing a toothy grin. Here's where it gets insane. The giant welcomed Jin-Woo, addressing him as a monarch, like it was acknowledging something about him. Jin-Woo stepped forward, understanding this was the true boss of the dungeon. The giant demanded to be freed, claiming he had information about the rulers and needed to speak with the monarchs. But as he studied Jin-Woo closer, his tone shifted. The amusement drained from his face, replaced by confusion and anger. He had mistaken Jin-Woo for someone else, and this realization frustrated him deeply. Now we're getting into the deep lore, guys. Piecing the giant's words together, Jin-Woo asked whether the rulers were the ones who had imprisoned him in chains. The giant confirmed it, saying he had been trapped and used by the rulers in preparation for a much larger war. This, he claimed, was only the beginning. Jin-Woo was intrigued not just by the implication of a greater conflict, but by the giant's intelligence. He pressed for more information, asking who the rulers really were. The answer came with a revelation. The rulers were ancient enemies of the monarchs. This gave Jin-Woo pause because if the monarchs were at war with the rulers, and Jin-Woo was becoming more and more entangled with the monarchs, did that make the rulers his enemies too? The giant confirmed his suspicions. He revealed that he too was a monarch and explained that both factions, the monarchs and the rulers, were targeting Jin-Woo. According to him, Jin-Woo lacked the power to stand against either side and would need more than strength to survive. He would need influence, a means to tip the balance. The giant, who we learn is named Legia, offers to help Jin-Woo if he releases him. But Jin-Woo remained cautious. The idea of a monster offering help to a human was absurd to him, hard to trust. Yet the giant, unbothered, promised to prove his intentions. Suddenly, the giant began to chant. His lips moved at an unnaturally rapid pace, words spilling out like a distorted recording as he muttered in an ancient, unfamiliar tongue. The strange cadence set Jin-Woo on edge, and without hesitation he summoned his daggers, prepared for a surprise attack. But the giant showed no intent to strike. He simply continued the incantation with eerie composure. A familiar chime echoed in Jin-Woo's ears as the system interface appeared before him. The message identified the being in front of him as Legia, king of giants and monarch of the beginning. It explained that Legia had activated an ancient spell known as the Oath of Faith, a binding pact that would prevent both parties from speaking any falsehood once accepted. After a brief moment of reflection, Jin-Woo made his decision and accepted the oath. Another system chime echoed, confirming the pact had been sealed. With the Oath of Faith now active, both Jin-Woo and Legia were bound. Neither could speak a lie until the oath was mutually revoked. Curious to test the oath's influence, Jin-Woo tried to express trust, but the moment he did, his throat tightened and no words came out. The King of Giants laughed heartily, clearly entertained by Jin-Woo's reaction. He reminded him that the Oath of Faith was working exactly as intended. No falsehoods could slip past. Jin-Woo asked directly why Legia could speak so fluently, so unlike the other creatures that had emerged from the gates. The King of Giants appeared confused by the question, prompting Jin-Woo to clarify. He was referring to the monsters from the dungeons, the ones that never spoke with reason. Legia's tone grew more serious. He explained that Jin-Woo had made a flawed comparison. The monarchs were not like those monsters. They ruled over them. The beings Jin-Woo had encountered were the residents of chaos, stragglers, prisoners warped by centuries of servitude. Their minds had long since broken, leaving behind only instinct and rage. But Legia was different. As a monarch and a king, he had preserved his mind through the ages, resisting the madness of captivity. He had waited patiently and silently for the one who might finally set him free. Shifting gears, Jin-Woo pressed for more information, this time about the silver-armored winged soldiers. Were they with the rulers? Legia confirmed it. Those beings were indeed part of the ruler's army. When Jin-Woo asked why the rulers were sending such creatures along with demons to Earth, Legia calmly reminded him he had already revealed the answer. The rulers were preparing for war. Earth was to be their battlefield, a stage set for the inevitable clash between monarchs and rulers. Jin-Woo still couldn't grasp how sending monsters to Earth would turn it into a battlefield until the King of Giants explained that the ruler's plan was simply to flood the human world with magic energy, transforming it into an arena brimming with mana. Jin-Woo was taken aback, trying to process the weight of those words. If the monsters that emerged from the gates were considered disasters, then the magical energy they brought with them had been seen as a blessing by many. Not just hunters, but civilians too, believed that mana crystals and gems were priceless resources. These objects had become the world's most vital energy source. But now, Jin-Woo realized that these so-called blessings were nothing more than stepping stones, foundations laid in preparation for war. The King of Giants continued, revealing that the best way to plant magic in a mana-deprived world was through the blood of those who already carried it. The rulers had chosen to sacrifice hostages and release monsters to infuse Earth with magic energy. The more blood spilled, the thicker the mana concentration became. Magic was strengthening the world, not to protect it, but to make sure it didn't collapse under the weight of the war to come. According to the King of Giants, the rulers were preparing the world to survive the conflict, not avoid it. Still piecing everything together, Jin-Woo asked what kind of war Legia meant. The King of Giants explained that it would be a rematch between the monarchs and the rulers, and Earth was the battleground. Hell was coming, and it would arrive sooner than anyone expected. There wasn't much time left. Neither side would sit idle now that Jin-Woo had made contact. In fact, the rulers might already be on the move. Jin-Woo couldn't shake the feeling that both sides were focused on him, targeting him. He asked why it felt like everyone was after him. And then came the truth. The power within Jin-Woo wasn't truly his. Legia explained that the original owner of that power had betrayed the rulers by transferring it to Jin-Woo. That single act had painted a target on his back, marking him an enemy of both monarchs and rulers alike. Yet amid all the tension, the King of Giants made a vow. He promised to stand by Jin-Woo's side and fight alongside him. All he asked in return was to be freed from his chains. Jin-Woo, eyes sharp, considered the offer. He asked, if Legia truly wished to help, wouldn't it be easier to become one of his shadow soldiers? The King of Giants flinched at the suggestion, visibly shaken. In that moment he saw the shadow of the true monarch flicker behind Jin-Woo's human form. Legia then explained why it was impossible. Monarchs and rulers existed in astral form, spiritual bodies, and when an astral body was destroyed, it vanished entirely, leaving nothing behind that could be reanimated or turned into a shadow. That was why he couldn't become one of Jin-Woo's soldiers. Jin-Woo listened, understanding, yet something still didn't feel right. A piece of the puzzle was missing. As the thoughts swirled, Jin-Woo summoned a dagger to his hand while the King of Giants pleaded again to be set free. Jin-Woo stepped forward with resolve, asking once more if Legia would truly be on his side. The King of Giants nodded solemnly, and Jin-Woo began cutting through the chains. One by one, the shackles fell away as Legia remained composed. Then, as Jin-Woo moved to break another chain, he paused, his gaze fierce, and asked whether Legia would also stand on the side of humanity. This time, Legia remained silent. Jin-Woo didn't need an answer. The oath of faith made lying impossible, and that silence spoke volumes. His eyes shifted to the back of Legia's neck, where a cold, glinting magic stone was embedded. That stone was the key. It bound him to the ruler's will. As long as it remained, Legia was still under their control, still a threat to humanity. Without warning, murderous intent erupted from the King of Giants as he swung his newly freed arm at Jin-Woo. Realizing the danger, Legia decided Jin-Woo could no longer be allowed to live, but Jin-Woo moved first, ducking low beneath the attack, then driving his dagger upward, deep into Legia's chest. Up close, Jin-Woo muttered coldly to Legia that he would have been a calamity. But the King of Giants responded with a twisted grin, claiming that the true calamity wasn't him. It was Jin-Woo. With his mind made up, Jin-Woo struck again and again, dodging desperate counterattacks as he buried his blades deeper. After several brutal blows, the King of Giants finally went still, blood gushing from his mouth. Even in death's grip, Legia's last words came as a venomous curse. He warned that as the war between humans and the residents of Chaos escalated, Earth would become a battlefield, and he hoped everything Jin-Woo loved would burn to ashes. But Jin-Woo's gaze remained cold, unwavering. Without hesitation, he swung his dagger one final time, slicing through the giant's neck in a single decisive motion. The sound of steel slicing air echoed through the dungeon as the King of Giants was beheaded. A system notification immediately followed, confirming the defeat of the dungeon boss, Legia, one of the 9 original monarchs. Jin-Woo had gained an immense amount of experience points. As the system struggled to tally it, he looked down at the magic stone in his hand, taken from Legia's body. Though he'd hoped for a new shadow soldier, he decided the stone would be enough, a souvenir from this brutal encounter. From Legia's body came a final surge of powerful energy before his form disintegrated into dust. In the aftermath, a familiar chime sounded. The system displayed the results. Jin-Woo had leveled up multiple times. His new level was now 122. News of the giant's annihilation spread like wildfire. Across the world, social media lit up with excitement. Talks of a new national-level hunter were everywhere. But unlike the Jeju Island incident, this wasn't just a Korean headline. Recognition poured in from all corners of the globe. One giant had managed to escape overseas, but it didn't get far. China's Lu Jiang took it down before it could cause any real damage. In Japan, a different storm was brewing. Chairman Matsumoto of the Hunters Association turned himself in. Though he didn't offer much explanation, many believed it was an attempt at redemption, a way to shoulder the weight of his past betrayals. But even as the news made waves, speculation over his true motives continued to stir. Jin-Woo, meanwhile, stepped out of the gate, far removed from the world's noise. He walked in silence, his mind lingering on the choice he'd made. Killing the King of Giants had been necessary. Letting Legia roam free would have been a disaster waiting to happen. He didn't regret it, but the weight of that decision still lingered. More than ever, he knew he had to grow stronger. The S-rank gate was cleared, and the battlefield was quiet. Around Jin-Woo, the fallen giant's shadows stood ready. The soldiers nearby, having witnessed his power for the first time, could hardly believe what they'd seen. They whispered among themselves, unable to hide their shock. Jinho, catching their glances, stood a little taller, proud to stand next to the man who commanded such fear and respect. Then Hanakawa approached, drawing Jinho's attention. He assumed she had something for Jin-Woo, but to his surprise, the message was for him. A phone call. He answered, and immediately something changed. His face tightened. The color drained. Whatever he heard hit hard. Jinho turned to Jin-Woo, apologizing. He had to return to Korea. Something had come up with his family. Without waiting for questions, he headed for the helicopter that was already waiting. As it lifted into the sky, Jinho sat in silence, his mind racing. His mother's voice on the call had trembled, shaken in a way he hadn't heard before. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Still, he tried to brush it off as nothing while the helicopter carried him home. Jinho arrived at the airport in Korea, still unsure of what to expect. Secretary Kim was already there waiting for him and wasted no time, informing him that a car had been arranged. Puzzled but concerned, Jinho followed silently as they made their way out. On the way, Kim spoke with a careful tone, advising Jinho to brace himself, that things weren't looking good, but promised he would explain everything soon. As they neared the hospital, Secretary Kim finally revealed the truth. President Yoon Myung-han, Jinho's father, had fallen into eternal sleep. The words didn't make sense at first, and then they hit all at once. Jinho screamed in anguish, calling out for his father, his voice trembling with disbelief as he tried to rush into the room only to be held back by Secretary Kim. He explained softly that Jinho's presence as a hunter, still struggling to control his power, could do more harm than good. The mere aura around him could aggravate his father's fragile state. Staggered by the helplessness, Jinho turned away from the room. Then he noticed Secretary Kim holding a black leather portfolio in his hand. When Jinho asked what it was, the secretary answered gently. It was something President Yu had been working on before collapsing. Hands trembling, Jinho opened it. Tears welled up immediately. Inside were newspaper clippings, all centered around him. Gossip pieces, minor press coverage, local write-ups, articles that barely anyone else would care about. Yet each had been carefully cut and stored by his father. The scrapbook was messy but deliberate. Secretary Kim told him then that President Yu's cold distance had never been from lack of love. On the contrary, his expectations for Jinho had been enormous, just like his love for him. Secretary Kim gave him a moment before suggesting they head back to the residence. Jinho, wiping his face, nodded in silence. As they walked through the hospital corridor, he suddenly stopped. A strange sensation crept through Jinho. He glanced around, sensing something, but the hallway was empty. Kim noticed and asked if anything was wrong, to which Jinho only muttered that it was nothing. They continued walking until the pair finally disappeared around the corner. From a quiet patch of shadow behind them, Jin-Woo stepped out. He had been there the whole time, observing without a word. Watching Jinho grieve had stirred something deep in him. He had come to the hospital unsure of what to do, but now his resolve was clear. Reaching into his inventory, he pulled out a bottle of the elixir of life. Outside, a car pulled up. Jinhee stepped out and hurried into the hospital. A sense of heaviness settled on her as she entered the corridor, her pace slowing. She passed by someone, just a blur in her peripheral vision, but gave it no thought as she reached her father's room. What she saw inside stopped her breath. President Yu was awake. Her eyes flooded with tears as she rushed to his side, stammering with disbelief. He was just as shocked, asking the nearby doctor how this was possible. The doctor, equally stunned, could only describe it as a miracle, something without precedent. While the room filled with emotion, Jin-Woo quietly slipped out through a back exit, unnoticed. Walking alone beneath the pale light outside, he allowed himself a rare, quiet smile. With the bottle now empty and the weight of his decision behind him, he muttered softly into the night, wishing Jinho an early happy birthday. This was his gift to him. Meanwhile, across the ocean in Maryland, the US government held a grand celebration honoring the hunters who had successfully cleared the recently emerged S-rank gate within the state. The atmosphere inside the venue was relaxed, filled with the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and casual banter. Hunters mingled freely, some marveling at the sheer scale of the event, others simply enjoying the rare chance to unwind. Then, without warning, a towering figure in a bright Hawaiian shirt stepped in from behind. Conversations quieted for a moment as heads turned toward him. It was Thomas Andre. He didn't say much, just reminded the group about a bet they'd made. His presence alone was enough to make a few of them shift nervously. With a grin, Thomas leaned toward one hunter and casually asked for his tie. The man hesitated, sweat beginning to form, but didn't argue. Wordlessly, he removed the tie and handed it over. Just as the laughter began to return, Thomas's assistant, Laura, entered the room, her tone bringing a different kind of attention. She informed Thomas that the list of guilds participating in the upcoming International Guild Conference had just been released. Among them was Korea's Ajin Guild. Thomas paused for a second, the name unfamiliar, until Laura added that it belonged to son Jin-Woo. That's when a smirk slowly crept across Thomas Andre's face. Korea's strongest hunter was coming to the States, and Thomas couldn't wait to meet him. And that wraps up the Japan Crisis arc, and with it, Season 3 comes to an end. Season 4 will be up soon on the channel, so stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part when it drops.